Andy doesn't completely understand what happened. And I'm okay with that. And our gun groups are okay with that because we're okay with that. We want to do this again. And frankly, all of the anti-gunners, the liberal, radically liberal Democrats, they don't believe that we could do what we did. Well, we did. And we're going to do that again. So elections are going to be extremely important. And we might be coming and asking you folks to use your cell phones to make long-distance phone calls to people who are identified gun owners in a district in order to help turn them out. And I'll tell you this, I cannot tell you how many phone calls I got from Tea Party volunteers who called me and said, Sam, I've done 50 phone banks. How many of them political phone banks sit down and go, I am a volunteer for so-and-so, please vote for them. And they say, oh, don't call me at home. Or they had more fun talking to gunners on the phone than ever before. They said, as soon as they heard guns, tension is up, because we already knew they were gunners. You know, the only thing we didn't say is, how'd you like the last subscription to Shooting Times magazine that you received last Thursday? and they had a great time, and we had a great response, and that's why we were able to mobilize so many gun votes in a very special situation, and we elected Andy Vidak. The reality is he has to run again this year, but because of funny stuff with reapportionment, the new district that he's running in is a Republican district. So we got a really good shot at it. Elections are very important. Courts. How many people have been paying any attention to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals? You know, usually you think, oh, they're the most overturned court in history. Well, you know, what they do when they pick a panel to hear rulings, they pick them out of a hat. And I think the good Lord was shining, smiling, and kind of snickering when they did that, because they picked one judge who was appointed by Ronald Reagan, one judge who was appointed by George H.W. Bush, or W. Bush, and one judge, just for kicks, a Clinton judge. You can go to our website, gunownerca.com, and for anybody who wants, I've got information on gun owners in California. You can join, or you can just go to our website. I've got it back there. I've got my business cards back there. Go to our website and read the ruling. It will give you goosebumps. It was like Samuel Adams sat down and wrote this ruling. And it basically said that the way California issues concealed weapons permits is unconstitutional. That we have the right to keep and bear arms not only in our homes, which was established by Allen and McDonald, but as they quoted Justice Scalia and said, there's another part to the Second Amendment, that's to bear arms. Keeping arms is in the home. Bearing arms means outside the home. And we're not going to ignore outside the home. And then they did an amazing historical write-up and justified it. And they called all of their other sister circuit courts knuckleheads. Because the other courts all rule the other way. There are 7 different courts out there that have ruled that requiring special circumstances in order for sheriffs or chiefs of police to issue CCWs is constitutional. You know, and sheriffs and chiefs could be capricious and do whatever they want to do. They have that power, was what they said. And then all of them quoted the losing side from Heller and McDonald, and they kind of flipped their nose at Justice Scalia. Well, this ruling heavily quoted Heller and McDonald, and it was beautiful. Literally. I talked to Chuck Michelle, who was the NRA attorney. He was the lead guy on this lawsuit, and we did amicus briefs that he told us he needed. And that's why we need to have multiple organizations out there, because he did the case, he did the arguing, and then he said, something else has come up. We need to address this other legal issue. So we hired an attorney, we wrote it and submitted it, and the issue, when we brought it before the court completely took that issue off the table and didn't even consider it, even though the other side made that as one of their points. So that's why it's important for all of us to be involved, that we cannot be just one organization. Well, anyway, the court declared that if you want a concealed weapons permit, you're a law-abiding citizen, comply with the laws of the state of California, do background check and all that stuff. Then your only good cause requirement is that You want to defend yourself. You want to protect yourself. Shh. You want to protect yourself. Self-defense, personal protection. That's all you need to do. Now, good sheriffs, you know, when you say, well, that means some of them knucklehead goofballs out there are going to go out. There's another provision in there that's good moral character. You know, if you've had 6 DUIs and you know, you beat your kids enough to send them to the hospital and you know, you're just an idiot, the sheriff doesn't have to give them a CCW. But for law-abiding citizens who don't have any of those issues, that right is clear, and you can get a CCW. Well, there was another case last week called Richards versus Prieto. That was the same issue, but in Yolo County. And what the court said is, reference our previous decision on this case too. And it's just a matter of time. We have some things to do in order to get that ruling to apply throughout the state of California, Arizona, Nevada, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. Hawaii is going to have to issue CCWs, and they are spitting pineapples back there. The Northern Marianas and Guam will all be under the same Constitution interpretation of the Second Amendment. Courts are extremely important. We have probably 6 cases that are still out there that we're waiting to get rulings on, and every one of them are going to enhance our Second Amendment. We're building a pyramid. We're laying the foundation. Heller was important to that. The Ninth Circuit Court was an addition to that. And people ask, why are we suing on all of the other bills that were signed? Well, we will, but at the appropriate time. That's why we raise money from our supporters, and then we go out and we find or make sure that we educate and recruit a good attorney that's going to carry our case, and we're going to win. And we'll win it. So, legislature, lobbying, elections, and of course, questions. Yes, sir.
Make sure you create a little here. While we're getting some questions, can you talk about the microstamping issue?
Yes. Microstamping, that's a good question right off the bat. Microstamping is a law that was passed a bunch of years back, and what it says is that as soon as the technology for microstamping was no longer encumbered by patents, some guy invented microstamping, and what it is a firing pin, when it hits a semi-automatic, in a semi-automatic gun, it hits the primer, on the tip of the firing pin is laser-etched 1/26th the thickness of a hair, markings that include make, model, and serial numbers, so that when you shoot the gun and the case goes out like that, the make, model, and serial numbers are printed on the case. So, of course, when you go out and commit a crime and you leave all of your cases there that say, this is the gun that I bought down at the, you know, the gun store, they come in and they every law enforcement agency buys the $300,000 micron microscope to be able to read these microscopic characters. And so that's what microstamping is. Well, the law said that the government cannot enrich one guy. What this guy did is he invented the technology, he introduced it to the legislature, and then he wanted to make money on it. Oh, just give me $1 for every time it's used. And that's illegal and unconstitutional. So what the court said is that when the patent infringements are gone, and more than 2 companies can use the technology, then it becomes law. Well, the manufacturer, the inventor of the technology has said, guys, it doesn't work. Every study, including UC Davis and forensics experts in America and throughout the world have said that it's not ready for prime time. Those of you guys that are shooters, you know, it not only on the firing pin, on the primer, but it's got to put it on somewhere on the back of the case. And what's on the back of the case? Oh, 45 ACP win, or RAM, or something like that. And remember, 1/26th the thickness of a hair. If that marking is indexed into that area, there's no marking. So it doesn't work. And imagine, I'm a criminal, Chewy from East LA, gang member. I go down to one of the gun ranges and I see that the LAPD SWAT team or the Belmont SWAT team or somebody's down there, you know, practicing, and they shoot their 9mm because they're going to have guns with microstamping. Scoop a couple of rounds and, you know, go out and do your drive-by shoot, and then you throw out all of the empty cases. What are they going to says that from now on, once that law becomes active, and it's up to the Attorney General to decide when it becomes active, every new handgun that is allowed to be sold in the state of California, every semi-automatic handgun, has to have microstamping, as well as a loaded chamber indicator, which, for those of you that don't know, it's a flag that comes up and says unloaded, 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 and a magazine disconnect, which means that when you are shooting to defend your life, and you do a tactical magazine change and you pull a magazine out because you know you're getting down, and you go to get another magazine to put it in, well, the bullet that's still in there doesn't work, because now you have a rock in your hand because the magazine disconnector disabled your gun. That's one of the things that, like LAPD had guns for years. The first thing that they did is have all of the magazine disconnects taken out of the guns. And so it's not good for police and sheriff's watch to be forced on us. So anyway, if it doesn't have these issues on them, then it cannot be tested. You know, there's a test where they send in 3 guns, they drop them on concrete to make sure they don't blow up. They shoot 600 rounds without failure. And by the way, every Saturday night special ever made passed the test, which was the purpose for having this law anyways. And none of them blew up in the tester's hands or anything like that. So what has happened is, if the manufacturers make any changes in their guns that they have approved, oh, by the way, all of those that happened before microstamping came in, grandfather did, they're on the list. And as long as the manufacturer makes that gun exactly the same way, it's legal to purchase in the state of California. Well, every manufacturer improves their product, makes it safer. You know, they change the texture on one of their operating levers, or they go from a metal to a Delrin spring follower, or they go from a round spring to a flat spring, or they use a different manufacturer to make exactly the same part. Well, as far as Kamala Harris is concerned, that constitutes a new gun and you have to retest it. And oh, by the way, since no one, not a single manufacturer in the world will put microstamping on their guns, there are no new guns that will be able to pass the California test. And Kamala Harris says, oh well, that's the way it is. No new handguns. And the reason, if you saw a couple of weeks ago, Ruger and Smith & Wesson put out a letter saying, we can't comply. Because the Attorney General took a photograph of the first gun, and they took a gun off the shelf, and they took a photograph, and they said, can you tell us under penalty of perjury that these guns are exactly the same? And of course, Ruger said, no, in all honesty, we've improved it. We've improved some of the materials, or some of the hardening, or the textures, and stuff like that. And Kamala Harris says, well, then that's illegal. And as soon as your gun expires on the list, you're going to have to resubmit another one, and it's going to have microstamping, or else you can't add it. You will no longer be able to use that. Have your guns on the list. We'll be stuck with revolvers. That's it. Every manufacturer has that issue, and it's only a matter of time before all semi-automatics fall under that condition. Step In National Shooting Sports Foundation, one of our partners, they represent all of the industry. They filed a lawsuit to have that declared unconstitutional. And that's what we're working on right now. But that's why all of the handguns are falling off the list. And unfortunately, when Smith & Wesson and Ruger fall off the list for most of our dealers, that's 30% of their handgun business. And it's going to hurt the economy of the state of California. And the legislature says, we don't care. Your question?
Yes, what's the law on inheritance of firearms?
You can inherit guns as long as they are not an assault weapon. For assault weapons, what is defined as an assault weapon in the state of California, when the registered owner, and there are only 170,000 registered assault weapons in the state of California, when the registered owner dies, the gun has to die with him. It cannot be transferred at all. It has to be destroyed or turned into police. Then you do what is simple. You go to the DOJ website, do an intrafamilial firearms transfer, and a father, there's a line, father, son, grandkids, father's father, which would be the grandpa, great-grandfather. You can pass guns this way, or wife, that's the only extension. You can transfer guns like that and just do the paperwork. If it's a handgun, you have to make sure that they have a handgun safety certificate. No, but you have to prove that they have the handgun safety certificate. On long guns, they can go up and down. You still have to go do the paperwork on long guns now that we have to register all long gun purchases.
We just dealt with that today. DOJ requires that the guns that were being passed from one familial member who no longer could have them legally to another, they had to go through an NFL dealer.
That's correct. They have to do that as a regular. Now, sister and brother, it can't go that way. It can't go sideways. It can't go to a cousin, nephew, uncle, aunt, great something or other. It can only go up and down. Grandfather, grandmother, father, mother, son, daughter, kids. So it's a mess. Yes, sir.
So I think 2 cities now pass large capacity bans for handguns. So if you have a CCW that's fully good all throughout the state, and you go into one of those 2 towns, what happens?
We don't have any cities that have passed a ban on handguns. We have 2 cities that passed a ban on the possession of a high-capacity magazine as defined under California law. When you have a California, a CCW, carry concealed weapons permit, CCW, is legal throughout the state of California. The sheriff can put conditions on the issuing of it. I don't know of any who do, but if they really wanted to be jerks and invite us to go ahead and sue them, they can actually say that I'm going to give you a CCW and you cannot take it anywhere outside the county. So you can have a concealed weapon, but you can't take it out of the county. They can technically do that, but we will go to court if they do. Right now, I know of no sheriff or chief of police who issues CCWs that pass that kind of a condition on their concealed weapons permit. Now, mind you, here's the thing. You can carry concealed in San Francisco, and my advice to you is that you keep your mouth shut. You don't flash it, you're not printing or anything like that, because California law says that if a police officer asks you if you have a concealed weapon, you have to tell them the truth. And any law enforcement officer can request that you give them your CCW, and you have to give it to them. And then what they can do is they can say, okay, you can get it when you're going out of town. Give me the gun, give me the CCW, or put that gun, lock it up in the trunk in a safe condition, and you cannot carry it. So there are still problems, but we're making big progress. And San Francisco is the only place that would do something like that. We have, Orange County, San Diego, Ventura, they're all counties that have said, we're not going to wait to be sued again, and so we're going to do the shall issue. And they're, Orange County got like 1,000 applications in one day. It was a day of beauty. It was really cool. And people are exercising.
Last question, good.
Okay.
Sam, I really appreciate you coming out here to make a presentation. We haven't really heard much about the shortage of ammunition.
Sure.
Which is the other side of the coin. You can have a gun, but it's not any good unless you have ammunition.
Yep.
I'm hearing all kinds of reports that ammunition doesn't work and there's an extreme shortage. Can you please address that?
Absolutely. I've been in contact personally with the ammunition manufacturers and the lawyer for the firearms industry, Larry Keene, who's a very good friend of mine. And the ammunition manufacturers they're saying we can't win. We're making more ammunition right now than we have ever made. And we are still not selling the government more than we ever do, which is about 30% of the ammunition they manufacture goes to any government agency. Remember the 3.4 billion rounds that Homeland Security was going to buy? Everybody envisioned a 6-mile-long train with carload with 9mm 223 and 40 Smith & Wesson being put in a warehouse somewhere. Well, they've only purchased about $800 million, which equates to about 150 rounds for every law enforcement officer that works under DHS, including their carry ammo and their practice ammo. So they're not buying, billions of rounds. Now, with regards to why we can't get it anymore, how many people in this room have stopped buying ammunition by the box and started buying it by the case or multiple boxes? Be honest. If you can find it. How many people have started buying bricks of 22 if you can instead of a box? Okay, that's our problem. For decades, since your grandfathers were kids, the thing to do was to go to the 5 and dime and you buy a box of 22 and you go out and you play potatoes or shoot squirrels or rabbits or gophers or neighbors' cats in East LA. And And you bought it by the box. Guys who go to the range to buy a box of 357 or 45 and they shoot it. Well, the entire economy of ammunition, now mind you, they don't make 1 billion rounds in a day. To make 1 billion rounds, takes all year to do that. So they send it out, they make it, and they send it out, they make it, and they send it out, and people have been buying it, they've been feeding. Folks, we are the Tea Party. We should understand the free market better than anybody else. We have changed the dynamic of the free market because we have disrupted the way that ammunition has been sold forever in America. We're buying it in large lots. How many people go to a Walmart somewhere and they're there at 9 o'clock on Tuesday or Thursday morning when the ammunition comes in so they can get their 3 boxes of 100 rounds of 12 gauge or, yeah, well, see, I know, some people are going like this. You know, we have disrupted the chain, but the ammunition manufacturers are working to try to put ammunition out in much bigger bulks. What has happened is that because the demand is so great for 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45, 22, 308, 223, or 5.56, is they are concentrating the manufacturing of those, and consequently, if you have a 257 Roberts, or a 6.5 by 55 Swedish, or something like that, that is your favorite caliber, and all your guns are chambered in that, they're not making them yet, and they will catch up. Remington, Federal, Winchester are still making ammunition in the same buildings they started making ammunition before World War I. The federal government has finally allowed one of the manufacturers to build a new facility to build ammunition. And can you imagine the permits that they require for ammunition manufacturing? That's the issue. We have, through our enthusiasm, we have disrupted the chain of commerce, and the manufacturers are trying to address that. And they will catch up. We got to keep buying all the ammo that we can, and there's no such thing as, I don't need any more ammunition. Because if you guys are so kind as to allow those of us who live in El Dorado County to be a part of the state of Jefferson, we want to come with all of our ammunition to have established a new state. Okay? And I told somebody earlier, I want to run for office in the state of Jefferson, and I want to run on the gun owner party. GOP. Okay? Folks,
All right, I want to thank Sam.
Yep.
Give a big hand for coming up here and travel all over. Please take it down. You can hang around after.
Folks, pay attention to our next guest. Afterwards, after the presentation, come up and ask all the questions that you want. I'll hang around until the last person has anything that they have on their mind resolved. Okay? Thank you. God bless you.
As Shane gets ready for the next